Out of all of Epic Mickey scrap content, the most discussed is definitely the different characters and character variations, especially the more dark and twisted ones. So let's delve into the Epic Mickey Wiki's page for scrap content and see what could have been. Most of the scrap character designs that are most commonly talked about are ones of Mickey, since as the most universal and recognized icon in the world, any official Disney content that breaks from the status quo is worth talking about. In the early design period of Epic Mickey, Mickey had more of a skinny and taller design, similar to how Sonic the Hedgehog evolved from a cutesy cartoon character to a more grown-up, sleek version of himself. This version was the working design of Mickey for quite a while, since it was used in test animations in 2007, and the silhouette of the design is what was used for Epic Mickey's logo in the final release. This version was scrapped for the reason that most other Mickey designs were, being that Disney weren't accepting of Mickey's design changing so dramatically. This design definitely reflects Warren Spector's plan of making Mickey more than just a company mascot, and reinforces the idea of an edgy Mickey Mouse. Because, I mean, just look at this face and tell me this doesn't look like an attempt to be as cool and edgy as possible. Even once Mickey's design was decided to be more like his classic cartoon version, there were still more chances to create edgy versions of our favourite mouse. The concept that stayed with Epic Mickey all throughout its development was the idea of choice and consequence, and originally this would affect Mickey's appearance a lot more than the ink drops that appear in the final game. There would have been 3 variations of Mickey: Hero, Scrapper, and Wastelander. These were being worked on even into gameplay, as a demo for Game Informer included these 2 versions. But let me explain what these versions are. As Mickey goes throughout Wasteland, he can either choose to respect the world and help restore Wasteland, be a massive jerk who destroys everything in his path, or dabble in a bit of both. And as stated before, originally this would change Mickey's appearance. The Scrapper version of Mickey is the one with the most varying designs. The most extreme of these is a version of a runaway brain type Mickey, with a hunchback, claws, fangs, and ink dripping off of Mickey, exposing his sketch exoskeleton underneath. The more tame of this is a recolored version of Mickey, with darker colours and a darker expression. This most likely would have been the version used in the final game. On the opposite side of the scale, there's Hero Mickey, with brighter colours and yellow gloves with a more heroic expression. And the third design was Wastelander Mickey, which was more or less exactly what we got in the final game. These designs use a slight variation of the brush, with a combination of paint thinner at the tip. This design looks to be re-added and rebrushed, based on promotional material we've gotten. Oswald, on the other hand, looks to have stayed pretty consistent throughout development. There is some art that shows him with overalls, and when Mickey went all skinny, Oswald received a similar design, but overall, he was pretty consistent. If anything, it was his partner that had the most work done. In the final game, she is Hortensia, who is a cat. You can tell because of the ears. But in some concept art, it shows Oswald with a rabbit counterpart, presumably his original partner Fanny, from the 1927 Oswald shorts. I don't think there's an explanation as to why she switched species during development. I guess Junction Point just wanted to mess with the status quo. A character that I wouldn't expect to have such drastic redesigns is the Mad Doctor. His in-game design is pretty much the same as his appearance in the 1933 cartoon. The concept art shows versions of him that aren't even close to the final product. My only guess is that they were made when Junction Point was testing their limits with Disney, and they weren't actually going to use the designs. Another honourable mention is Abe from Epic Mickey 2. In the final game, Abe looks more like a robot than anything else, but in the prototypes that were found a few years ago, he looked more like Abraham Lincoln, obviously referencing great moments with the Mr. Lincoln. It's not known why his design was changed so late in the game, although it might have to be because the animatronic is based on a real person, instead of a fictional character. Not to mention that throughout the course of the level, you have the choice to pretty much effectively kill him, which, especially because it's Abraham Lincoln, doesn't really look too well on Disney. And now that we've got all of our main characters' designs, we should go back to the first glimpse of Epic Mickey the world got, in some scrapped concept art. Before Epic Mickey had been officially announced, some horrific concept art leaked. Most of this concept art was of enemies, using various different pieces of Disney characters. The beetleworks that were seen on this concept art most closely resemble tankers, but more grotesque. The leaked art also had characters that don't resemble anything in the final game. Like, what did this turn into? Were these Skeleton Man and Grim Reaper designs meant to be the Blot? I guess we'll never know. But there is one big difference between these particular bits of character art and all the other ones, being that these designs were never supposed to be seen by the general public, and they were never considered for the final Epic Mickey game. In the wise words of Warren Spector, that concept art was leaked, and never intended for public consumption. I had the team do that because I needed to know where the line of acceptability was for Disney. What they would be comfortable with, and what they wouldn't be comfortable with. The way to find a line is to cross it, by a lot. Do something really out there, and have them go, no, too far. Then you do something a little less radical, and less radical, until frankly, you get where you want, and they don't even realize you've gotten there. Honestly, I'm kinda glad we never got this more overly dark take on Epic Mickey. I feel like Mickey as a character has a very bright and cheerful energy to him. Making him overly edgy would have broken the spirit of the character. It would be interesting to see if he was an upbeat hero in a depressing wasteland, who spends his entire time trying to lift everyone's spirits. But, oh well. Epic Mickey boasts a fair few scrapped enemy variations, and even entire enemy designs that never made the final cut. An example of a scrap Beetleworks is the Lifters. They walked on 4 legs like spinners, and had a giant arm on its back to throw Mickey into pools of thinner. It was ultimately cut from the release due to storage limits. There's also a scrap Blotling in the form of the Drop Wings. And I know what you might be thinking, but those are in Epic Mickey too! But before we got this Blotling, we had this one, with bigger wings and looks more like a pterodactyl than a Blotling. Especially since it's coloured orange and not purple like all the final Blotlings are. Speaking of scrapped Blotlings, different variations of them also didn't make the final cut. Originally, they would have come in an array of different colours, much like the bunny children were, but in the end they were only purple, which fits the whole drippings of the Blot plot point, since the Blot doesn't have red splotches all over him. Beetleworks has even more scrap variations. In the credits of Epic Mickey 2, it shows a basher with the costume of a 50s waiter, a hopper dressed as a blue bird, and a spinner taking the form of a car from Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. None of these appear in either game outside of the credits, but the biggest and most infamous scrap character in Epic Mickey is the Oswald Blot. You see, up until fairly late in the development process for Epic Mickey, Oswald was going to be a villain, working with the Mad Doctor and later the Blot. The scrapped Oswald villain arc would culminate in Oswald merging with the Blot, with Mickey having to free and convince Oswald to stop being a baddie. A common misconception is that this scrap villain would be called the Stormblot. This led many people to believe that Abe's piece of dialogue discussing the Stormblot was hinting at Epic Mickey 3. The bit of dialogue is actually recounting the Shadow Blot fight and Mickey Jug Mountain, with the Stormblot referring to the real Blot that's blown up with fireworks at the end of the first game. This plot point was scrapped when John Lasseter, the then Chief Creative Officer at Pixar, suggested to Warren Spector that they should make Oswald more likable, since this would be the first time in many decades the public would be exposed to Oswald, and making him a villain would tarnish his already small reputation. So that's it. This video was just a basic overview on scrap character designs, so if you want a more detailed video, make sure to tell me in the comments, or through likes or subscriptions, I don't really care. And just like any other game, Epic Mickey is full of scrap material, and truth be told, there's probably more scrap content that we don't know about, but hopefully Rebrush can give these unused ideas life again. And there we go, another week, another video. Do you have any scrap Epic Mickey ideas that you wish had made it into the final cut? Tell me down in the comments. And I'll be back next week for more Epic Mickey videos about something.